Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, wherever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It's me, Omar, again from Hardware Pod, not the Between the Stripes podcast network anymore. I decided after some thinking, I had to do a rebrand to have Hardware be the name because the TikTok and the Instagram accounts just did not match up. So we're now the Hardware Pod, not the Between the Stripes podcast network anymore on YouTube. Spotify's giving me some issues with the name change, but that'll be rectified soon. And I'm joined by a guest here. I'm excited. One of the winners of the sweepstakes that I kind of modified the rules so everyone could win earlier in the week. But I'm joined by Cuthbert Hutton, the lead of the SSN Army account. And yes, Army has its own SSN account. SSN is just great. I mean, they just consolidate pretty much all the content for like schools in general. So I mean, even schools like Austin P. I think Austin P has one, and Eastern schools like that have SSN accounts. I know UPenn is one that I follow. Cuthbert leads that account, and just give it a follow. I'll put the link in the bio for the podcast. But Cuthbert, thanks for joining. Thanks for guessing underneath the tweet earlier in the week, and I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I got it wrong. I guessed Yale. I don't even remember what the correct answer was, but it's like there's only so many Ivy League schools. I figured I'd take a stab at it. But thank you so much for having me on. You and I have followed each other on my personal account for a year or two, and I've always really liked all the things that you've done with the mini documentaries, and obviously there's quite a bit of crossover in our fandom. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words too. And I mean, I'm just excited. Like, I just love communicating with you on Twitter, just, discussing just Army football, the program that we both love, and what we're going to be doing now. I mean, I'm sure like you'll see the title, you'll probably see the title of this, whatever I decide to title this podcast, like you viewing or listening, and, realize that, this is what we're going to talk about all along. Like, this is the big headline of the offseason is Army switching from the triple option to the new shotgun run offense. And like for me, I think it's a good move, and I don't think it's one that Army fans should be scared of. Just looking at the directions that similar programs, similar teams who ran similar schemes kind of went. Like for me, what comes to mind is envisioning kind of like a Georgia Southern type offense before they switched with Clay Helton or a New Mexico. New Mexico is always my favorite comparison because the UNM offense in 2015 and 2016, which I was in New Mexico, I was in the Albuquerque Metro for. Those were some fun offenses to watch. Ran out of shotgun, had some of the most, I guess, imaginative formations like there. Like they had a pistol Maryland I formation. You think the Maryland I is crazy. The pistol with three backs behind. So I'm going on a tangent, but I don't think it's much to be scared of. Cuthbert, I want to hear your thoughts on the new Army scheme.
I'm really excited. I was a big proponent of Brent Davis. I liked his offensive schemes. We had incredible success. I mean, you take a player like Ahmad Bradshaw, and it's very easy to say, well, it doesn't really matter who the OC was. He was such a transcendent player, at least in terms of Army, that he would have excelled. But a lot of the success he had was from Brent Davis because he was a little more limited in his ability to throw relative to like Kelvin Hopkins or some of the quarterbacks we've had more recently. But what the biggest issue was, in my opinion, with Davis was his inability to like develop new schemes, in particular based on like new rules. I don't want to completely blame like the chop blocking and the cut blocking rules on this change, but just that like the triple option, it's not going to work if you have to follow the blocking rules as they exist now. The gun option, I think, can work because the play is getting created with space built into it, as opposed to a traditional triple option where everybody, you're under center and everybody's stacked up on top of each other. And so you're going from a fist fight in a phone booth to all of a sudden trying to spread it out wide. And to compensate for that, you have to be making blocks at the second and third level that are now illegal. And so now When I think about a gun option team, I'm not thinking about one team in particular who runs the scheme, but I'm thinking about sort of highlights and plays that I've seen from teams like Oregon, teams like Coastal Carolina, who from a gun formation will unexpectedly run an option. And it's like, it's highlights. So of course they all look good because it's a 15-second clip on TikTok or whatever. But I look at plays like that and I can only assume those are the types of plays that are going to start getting incorporated into our offense. And I don't know, if you're looking at highlights, it all looks good. So it looks good to me. I don't really know enough, but I know that moving forward with Brent Davis was untenable. And I say that as a Brent Davis fan and as a Jeff Monken fan. I mean, he brought Davis in on day one. I trust implicitly Monken's ability to hire staff. But at a certain point, it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you too. And so for me, like my thing was like the production was still great despite the cut blocking rules. So I was kind of blindsided by the change because you look at the numbers we had, like rushing numbers that we had in a lot of our games. Really great rush numbers, honestly. Excuse me, really great rush numbers. And I was just kind of blindsided, honestly, by it. But I mean, I'm excited for it because and I don't think it's too much of a change from the status quo because if you look at Monken's first year, which I remember a lot of the plays vividly from Monken's first year, 2014, because 2014 was a very awkward year. It was a very growing pains year, right down to the uniforms. It was the in between. It was the in between of the rebrand where I mean Army like it was
We
just
we the
awkward.
rebrand, we ended up on the better side of the rebrand. This is better than what we had before.
Yeah.
Personally, this is my favorite right here, and I wish we
Oh,
would go
mine
back.
too.
Maybe we could
Mine
have like
too.
some alternative, like some alternates. We wear like maybe once every 2-3 years that go back to the mule, but that's just me.
I
Sorry.
agree. No, I agree. So yeah, like I said, just like it was an awkward year, like a very awkward year scheme wise. I think Monken's trying to figure out Monken and Brent Davis trying to figure out like what they had exactly. So you saw a lot of gun, a lot of orbit motion, a lot of shotgun triple option. I wouldn't say maybe not a lot, but more than you've seen in recent years. So I don't think it's that much of a change from the status quo. But I think honestly the one thing that I'm excited to see is I've always felt like these past couple years, I feel like Army's offenses had constantly underused their slot backs and their capabilities on the edge, like the back, because just looking at, I mean, it's not just like everyone thinks about it's just Tyrell Robinson. It's not just Tyrell Robinson. Like Ijon Marshall was amazing this year and averaged 10 yards a carry, but he only had 21 carries this whole year. The whole year. I mean, there's also Brahim Murphy, great slot back as well. My old roommate, he thinks like, and I agree too, thinks like Kel Walker was underused throughout his career at the academy. So I'm excited to see like how we use these gun guys, whether it be through a jet sweep option motion or maybe like a fake I guess a fake dive, fake zone read with Tyson Riley or one of the other fullbacks, and then just getting it out on a swing pass out wide to one of the slot backs. So I'm excited to see how these guys do with honestly what I hope would be more opportunities in space.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as well, because if I'm not mistaken, we have no fullbacks coach for next year. At least nobody's listed on the roster as a fullbacks coach. So as we're transitioning to the gun option, obviously the role of the fullback is going to be getting phased out, which is understandable because you're not going to be under center. What you're talking about with the slot backs, getting them out, especially on the outside. Kel Walker, you mentioned him. He was fantastic on the short read pass plays. And but I do think he was underutilized. You talk about guys like Ijon Marshall, and I mean Tyrell Robinson. Everybody talks about, oh, he's the home run hitter, and he's fantastic. But you know, just because you can return a punt for a touchdown, which he did, which was phenomenal, it doesn't mean that he's getting utilized the way he should be in the offense. So, if we're sort of phasing out the significance of the fullback, that offensive production is going to need to get picked up somewhere. And the slot backs is exactly where it needs to go. I think one of the problems we've been seeing slowly progressing over the last few years is we are both losing the true triple option that's trying to work towards the corner, trying to work to the outside. I think because of the blocking rule is a major component, not the only one, but a major component. While at the same time, we've also, over the last few years, seemed as though we had lost the ability to gain 3 yards in a cloud of dust, in a cloud of dust. And maybe that's because we just happen to have a glut of really high caliber athletes when we had, Darnell Woolfolk and we had Connor Slumka and we had, I don't know, Hawaiian Punch. I can't remember his real name, but the Hawaiian Punch, and so don't get me wrong. I love Jacoby Buchanan, and he had that unbelievable streak of never losing a yard. But the last couple of years I've watched Army football, I haven't had the confidence in their ability to just go to the dive. So what had happened is we had both lost the ability to go to the outside because of the blocking scheme, or maybe it's the athleticism or whatever it is. There were very few traditional triple options run where you would see either Christian Anderson or Jabari Laws or Jamel Jones or whoever it was, literally, doing the role and then looking to either pitch or keep it. That happened much, much less often than people sort of give Army credit for. So we lost the ability to run the option to the outside, while at the same time lost the ability to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So I think the transition to the gun option is absolutely what we need. Um, I'm very, very excited to have Thatcher in as the co-OC. I don't know exactly how it's going to work between him and Matt Drinkall, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, as they are sort of the two-headed monster of the offense. I don't know who's going to be doing what in terms of play calling or schematics. But like I said earlier, I have implicit trust and confidence in Monken's ability to hire. And he seemed to snatch this guy out of nowhere, sort of Division II, Nebraska Kearney. I think it's a good hire. I mean, I drink the Kool-Aid. That's my MO as a fan. I drink the Kool-Aid, but I really like it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I don't think the change is as drastic as we've seen other Army offense changes. You mentioned Nebraska Curdy, where Drew Thatcher came from. It's almost a tongue twister, Drew Thatcher. But TJ Davis was an All-American. I think he's like a third team All-American, honorable mention All-American at D2, but their quarterback threw 167 times last year, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks, very, very efficient, didn't make any mistakes. Running the ball, 1,136 net yards per game, 1,246 non-sack rushing yards. So just I mean, just a great attack for quarterbacks. I'm excited to see the quarterbacks that I guess to get the quarterbacks in the edge. And the thing for me is I guess this is a segue to the quarterback play. Not much experience returned to the quarterback room this year, obviously. Big question mark, except for Bryson Daly. But I just look at this system, and the 2.5 minutes of highlights of TJ Davis from Nebraska Kearney that I did watch. And I mean, I just can't help but think to myself, like a guy like Christian Anderson would have been great in that scheme. A guy like yeah, I mean Jamel Jones, Jabari Laws, more so Jamel Jones and Jabari Laws, just because like they're passing, like how they were as passers. And yeah, Christian Anderson to a degree. But I mean, I can't help but imagine like how great they would have been in a scheme if they weren't handcuffed by the passing scheme. And like the triple option, don't get me wrong, I know it was never meant to be an offense to come from behind or like produce a long drive from that. But it's like I really feel like we'll have a legitimate play action game under this new scheme. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on the quarterback play.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Bryson Daly obviously is the sort of the heir apparent. He got a little bit of time in at the end of last year. He had it was like a 64-yard run against, I don't know, UMass, or I don't want to say it was like a garbage team, but I remember it being a garbage team. And he seems to have a silhouette very similar to, who was it this year? Not Jamel Jones, Cade Ballard, where he appears to be built more like a fullback than a quarterback. Now, on that long run touchdown he had, it looked like he's got pretty good feet. I don't know what his arm looks like. I have only recently begun following Army football to the level at which I'm paying attention to who's being recruited. And I know that Army recruits, I mean, college football recruits in general are a little bit of a mixed bag because you got a lot of red shirts. You have a lot of people who, um, they're extended offers, or they accept offers, and then they wash out, or they transfer schools. It's not like it's the NBA draft and everybody going 1 through 25 will be starters. So, and then you compare it to Army, where I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of them are going to go to the prep school. So these are guys who we're not going to see for at least a year, probably more than that, because they might go to the prep school and then they might do another 1 to 2 years of riding the bench and learning the system. I would be curious to know, and I did put this out on Twitter at the time, responses from people who seem like they would know. They answered a certain way. So I basically said, does it seem like we are recruiting differently this year in preparation for Thatcher? And by that, I mean, like, are we bringing in more athletes and fewer like tanks, fewer like big guys, fullback style, more fun and gun, spread, gun option type recruits? And the responses I got on Twitter from people who I would think know what they're talking about, at least they know what they're talking about more than I do, they said that it didn't seem as though the recruits were any different than usual. This year's recruiting class was approximately on par with last year's, but last year's was significantly better than 2 years ago because we had a steep drop off in our recruiting for a year following NIL. And as NIL kind of like settles itself out and the Wild West is calming itself down, it seems like we are kind of back in our groove of where we are able to recruit in terms of our talent. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the quarterback play. I I wouldn't think we're going to be going deep too much, but this year, the land air offense, as it was often called, the Army air raid, I think against Coastal Carolina, we had, 4 passing touchdowns. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
I agree. And I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna be like a deep threat, but I think like there's gonna be like a more legitimate intermediate passing game than like the extremes, just like deep and short. So I do think there'll definitely be a more intermediate pass game, which I think it's interesting too. Because yeah, looking at the amount of attempts that TJ Davis had last year, 167, I think in 11 games. I think he played an 11 game season in D2. So that's about 15 pass attempts per game. I think that'll do a better job of keeping guys like Isaiah Alston and recruiting guys like Isaiah Alston. Like I think the receiver recruiting will definitely improve. You'll see less occurrences of guys like Alston hitting the transfer portal, like testing the waters. Because they're happy, like they're not just wide tackles anymore. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see the coming of the next, I guess I was gonna say Jordan, the next Jeremy Trimble. There's like a million Trimble brothers that went to the academy. But yeah, like I'm just excited to see how both quarterback and receiver recruiting, but I kind of expect if I were to put like a kind of an over under not going to gamble on it, but over under on like the amount of passing yards we average per game. I think about the 150, maybe even like 130. I'd say 130, 150th range is a pretty reasonable estimate, I think, for the amount of passing yards per game that will average.
I mean, I would absolutely be happy with give or take 12 passes a game. That's 3 a quarter, give or take. If you want to go up to maybe 16 passes a game, 4 a quarter, that would be fine by me. I really don't want to see us getting into situations where we are trying to pass the ball 25 times, 30 times, 35 times. We got into a situation like that with Coastal Carolina this past year, and it was a relatively close game, but it's not, I don't know. I don't want to be I don't want to be beholden to an ideology, but that's not Army football. And I like Army football. That one of the things I love about Army is the style of play that we use and the reliance on sort of like old school fundamentals, teamwork, sort of, one team, one mission. It's not It's not just get one star out there. And I don't know, maybe it's Pollyanna of me to care so much about that, but I do. I really like it, and it feels good. It looks good in my mind's eye to know that that's how our military academy is operating, and that is the mindset of the players on the field, and that one player's success is all the players' success. You look at the different quarterback rooms we've had over the last few years with guys cycling in and cycling out. Everybody is modest, everybody is humble, everyone is supportive. I think that's really fantastic. Not to put too broad a term on it, but in terms of what it means for our military and the leaders who we are creating, West Point is a crucible of creating greatness in our military and in our officer corps. So I think it's really, really fantastic that our football team, I mean, all of our teams, hopefully, but in particular, our football team exemplifies that.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, now that you say like about 4 passes a game, 3 or 4 passes a game, I'm gonna bring down my over under to about 100, 110 now. I think that's more reasonable. I think that's a better way to look at it rather than just like throwing a number in the dark like I was. But I think just talking about quarterback play, I think it's a good segue to talk about the schedule and some of the matchups. And I just think I think this new offense where it's not it's not almost like a train wreck to see us pass the ball. Not that the pass attack was bad last year, but it's like what's coming. You know it won't be pretty at times. I think this new attack will make us more in tune to handle the shootouts versus Frank Harris and UTSA, Grayson McCall in Coastal Carolina. Even heck, I think this is a stretch. I think this is a stretch, but even like a shootout with Syracuse with Sean. Actually, I don't think Sean. I think Sean Tucker is declared for the draft, but shootout with Syracuse and Garrett Schrader and that offense. So I guess your thoughts on that. I guess are we better equipped now to handle those shootouts?
Uh, Honestly, probably. My favorite kind of Army game to watch, if we're not just going to win in a blowout, if we're not going to be dominant, my favorite kind of Army game to watch, would be like when we played San Diego State in, I think was that the Armed Forces Bowl, maybe the Military Bowl that year, where you know, look, they had Rashad Penny, and every time he touched the ball, he was gold, and that was no fun to watch. But then we would get the ball, and we would just eat clock and eat yards. And I think we had like 46 minutes of time of possession in that game, something crazy like that. I love that. I love watching a game where it's obvious that when our offense is on the field, we have total control of the field. And we're not necessarily going to score in a minute and a half and give the ball right back. We're going to eat clock. We're going to make their defense go through those reps. We're going to wear them down going into the second half. I love that. That's one of my favorite things. So having a gun option offense or a little more of a spread option, I do think it's going to help us in those shootouts because, you're watching us play Wake Forest 2 years ago and we lost 70-56. No, we put up 56 points, but you're watching that game going, how long can we keep this up? Because it's clear that who's the Wake Forest quarterback? Hartman? Was it Hartman? He is scoring at will. And so it's like, how long can we keep this up? So hopefully now with the new offensive strategies, the new scheme, we'll be able to stay alive in those games. I watched Coastal Carolina this past year, UTSA this past year, and we were in it, but I didn't have the confidence in us the way I did in years past against a San Diego State, let's say. And I do think that this will help us sort of stay alive in those shootouts. Our defensive coordinator, what's his name? Woody. Now his name has left me.
Yeah, Nate Woody.
Nate Woody. He, I don't know. I watch games and I go, we got to get rid of this defensive coordinator. But then I sort of step back, during the week. I look at the stats, I look at the big picture, and I go, he's actually really overperforming. And he's doing really, really well. The, in game, I have that anxiety. Maybe it's just sort of tattooed on my brain from watching however many years of Army football where we never had a chance to defend the pass. And so I always have that anxiety that our defense is never going to be able to stand up. But we seem to magically pull out a goal line stand when we need to, whether it's against Navy or against Liberty or against Oklahoma or, so Nate Woody, he has my confidence. I hope that with our new offense, we can hang with teams who have high powered offenses a little better. And in terms of so the schedule this year, I'm really looking forward to it. As I said, I haven't done a deep dive yet. I think there's absolutely some winnable games. The defensive coordinator for ULM, I mean, he's got to be sweating because there's no way he has any idea what he's going to be seeing or what they're going to be seeing, which could be really, really good for us. Could be really bad for us. I mean, we might show up and it's, halfway through the third quarter and we're going, is this offense really going to work? I think we could see some really good things this year. I mean, looking at our schedule, we've got Syracuse, we've got BC, obviously LSU, like I love to daydream and think that maybe we pull off an incredible upset, and maybe we do, but let's not be too optimistic here. We all live in reality. We've got Coastal, their quarterback. He said he was going to transfer. Then he decided he's not going to transfer. So obviously they're going to have a strong offense. It's going to be really interesting to see if the offense falls flat this year. What I am 100% sure of is that Monken is not going to cut bait. He's too patient. He's too thoughtful. And he's too determined to make sure to get things right. And so if this year really gets sideways and we end up winning like 3 games or something, or 2 games even, I'm not expecting another monumental shift. I don't see any reason why Monken should ever be let go. I mean, he appears to be the best coach we've had in over half a century. I was joking on Twitter earlier this week that with any luck, 20 years from now, it's not going to be called Mikey Stadium. It's going to be called Mikey Monken Stadium because he'll be, he's already, I think, the number 2 winningest coach. And I think he's got a job for as long as he wants it. And I think that the fan base is really happy with that. So, we will see how it goes. I think we're going to probably have a pretty good year. I think we're going to be above 500, and I could see us in a bowl game, and I could see us winning a bowl game.
Yeah, so I agree with that, honestly. The schedule's just, I mean, LSU, of course, Coastal Carolina. We'll see how post Chadwell Coastal Carolina looks. I think they're also a wild card. UTSA is definitely a scary game, especially now on a short week with that game being on a Friday now. Should be a great atmosphere though. Anytime Army plays in the Alamo Dome, with the exception of the Notre Dame game, atmosphere is electric. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, those games are tough, and I look at the schedule and I wouldn't be surprised if like out of Coastal, UTSA, and Syracuse, we end up with 3 losses already there. I do think Boston College. So, like what keeps coming to my mind with the Boston College game is I think that game's gonna be a dogfight, honestly. Especially with Boston College losing Zay Flowers, their great deep threat who is about to have like a very like honestly. I don't know if you watched the All-Star games, like the college All-Star games covered, but he's about to make probably be like the first rounder the East West Shrine Games had in like years, almost decades. So Zay Flowers is leaving Boston College, and I keep thinking to myself like this game, Army Boston College can be like UConn BC last year when UConn hosted BC out at the Rentschler Field, and just out physicaled them, dominated them, honestly, like at the line of scrimmage and everything. It was just a defensive masterclass for that UConn team. 13-3 victory over the Eagles. 13-3, 13-10, whatever the score was. So I can honestly see that happening. That game's at home. That game's at Mikey, um, Boston College. So I can see that one. But otherwise, like these other games are toss-ups. Like Troy, you get Troy at the Academy. Get that home field advantage. And maybe it's not a 10-9 Troy victory. So I'm excited. I can see us in the bowl. I do think for us to make a bowl though, we'd have to get past Air Force for sure, I think. Because I'm not really gonna prognosticate a record, but if we can get Air Force, I think things will look good, honestly. Especially Air Force
Well,
in the year without Brad Roberts.
I think so. Brad Roberts is gone. I think Zeke is coming back for Air Force, if I remember correctly, and he's always very talented. But something that somebody on Twitter pointed out, who's someone who's sort of playing a little more three-dimensional chess than I am and looking deeper. They noticed that this upcoming year, in 3 consecutive weeks, Air Force has Colorado State, Navy, and then Army. And maybe it's Navy first and then Colorado State. But they do not have a bye week before they see us. And they are playing 2 rivalry games before they see us. I think that bodes really well for Army because, you have the sort of emotional fatigue of, all right, it's time to get up for a rivalry game. And then a week later, you got to get up for a rivalry game. And then a week later, I don't know if it's going to be the Commander in Chief Classic again or whatever they call it when it was played in Texas for 2 years. I can't remember if it's going to be neutral site this year, but I think that bodes really well for us. Obviously, Navy is always a critical game. That's the game of the season. This year is a perfect example. We had a down year, so to speak, but we closed out with a win against Navy, and it was an ugly win. But as soon as Moretzky hits that field goal in double OT, all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, hey, we had a damn good year this year. I mean, come on. We finished above 500. We beat Navy, glass half full. The sky's the limit for this team. I mean, that's the way I think as a fan. So, obviously Navy and Air Force are the 2 most important games. Beyond that, I love that we're playing Syracuse. I wish we played Syracuse more often. They're the biggest name team in the state of New York. I mean, I know we play Buffalo kind of off and on, but I love that we're playing Syracuse. I want to play Syracuse more. I'm really pumped that we're playing BC. I like when Army plays other high-level Northeast teams. And when I say high level, it's on a relative scale. So I'm talking about Rutgers. I'm talking about UConn. If we can beat Navy, Air Force, Syracuse, and BC, I'm not saying we will, but if we can somehow pull that out, I mean, then it's not that the rest of the season doesn't matter, but those are huge games. Those are huge games. Those could be team defining games, for years moving forward. And it's like you said, I mean, Troy, that's going to be a toss up. Coastal Carolina, that's going to be a toss up. We have had UMass's number for years. UMass actually, on a relative scale, they benefited from the transfer portal immensely. They have brought in 3 and 4-star recruits that they would never get out of high school, and somehow they're bringing them in on the transfer portal. I don't know how they're doing that. UMass appears to be much like UConn on the way up after a decade or more of being the dregs of college football. They seem to be ascending, not to the college football playoff, but they are no longer the doormat. It appears that they have been for quite some time. UTSA, that's going to be a toss-up. UL Monroe, I mean, that's not a gimme game other than the fact that it's the first game of the season, and they don't know what our offense is going to look like. But then again, our players, they don't know either, and they haven't run the scheme yet. So it might not be the well-oiled machine that we hope it's going to be. Excuse me. Dell State, I think, obviously will probably be a win. Holy Cross, obviously, is going to be a win. But there's not a lot of gimmies there. So based on the coin flips, are we going to go, 4-8, or are we going to go 8-4? I don't know yet. but I'm really, really excited for this year.
Yeah, me too. And like you said, the Syracuse Boston College games, those are just huge. I mean, those are just honestly the rivalry games. Like, of course, like not on the level of the academy games or anything, but like this is Northeast rivals. Like this schedule looks straight out of the Jim Young years. Like it looks like a Jim Young schedule where we have Boston College, we got Syracuse on the schedule too. Looks like, looks like a schedule out of the 80s. Looks like, the Syracuse Army game is going to be on your local, independent station, your local over the air independent station as like the Northeast game of the week. So I love the schedule. I like the point on UMass too. And honestly, like UMass last year, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of afraid of that one because they were coming off the game where they went to Kyle Field and they made Texas A&M's offense look anemic for most of the game in a 20-3, and they ended up losing 20-3, but that game was a close game like up until I'd say like the start of the fourth quarter. I put on one of my screens. Like it would definitely became like a must-watch game like that week. And Don Brown too. I definitely think Don Brown is the right guy for the job there at UMass. I mean, he's won there, took them to the Division 1 AA title, Division 1 AA at the time, the title game. And this looks like the job that he's going to kind of sunset with. And I had no idea about the transfer portal, but I know I feel like they match up well with Army just because I feel like ideally that's what Army would look like, with this scheme. Like they have the tough quarterback, Gino Campiotti, uh, tough as nails. They have Ellis Merriweather running the ball too, a great running back. So I mean, ideally that's what I think Army would look like, in a gun scheme. I guess if they continue to use Tyson Riley. So I like the point on UMass, but yeah, this schedule is just so great. And yeah, like there's so many wild cards. Honestly, I could go back and forth on some of the wild cards. Like I don't think UTSA is as much a wild card as we think it is. Like going on the road with the Alamo Dome, because I think honestly, like even though we led them in the second half and we blew the lead, I think UTSA is one of the few group of five venues that it's actually scary to play at as a visitor, where like there is a legitimate home field advantage because UTSA like the way that they're I guess that school, the students, the locals, everyone in that community has backed that program since honestly since like 2021. Like it's just tough to go to the Alamo Dome and win a game against UTSA. So I wouldn't say that one's as much a toss up. Will it be close? Absolutely, but it just depends. We need all the veterans, every single Army fan that's in the San Antonio area, at Fort Sam Houston, at Fort Hood. We need every single Army fan to like show up there to kind of give it a 50-50. But yeah, like even Syracuse too. Syracuse is kind of funny. Are they here to stay? Are they not? So I'm just so excited for the schedule. I'm just excited for the games that we have like the next couple years, honestly. More Northeast rivalries. Um I guess like the thing that does annoy me though is the two FCS games. Like I understand it's getting harder and harder to schedule as independent, but it just makes it harder on us to get to a bowl game. But really excited for the schedule.
It's in terms of scheduling the FCS schools. I mean, you got to have one. I mean, you don't have to, but it helps to have one in there just to help hone your team's schemes and your plays. And that sounds so belittling to those schools. Villanova came in this year. At the time, they were ranked number 4 in the FCS. I don't know where they finished, but it was not nearly that high. They did not go deep into the FCS playoffs, if they even made the FCS playoffs. And Villanova's been on a little bit of an upswing recently, but they're not really competing with the North Dakotas, the South Dakota States, the JMUs before they came up to FBS. I think it's important that we have that. I actually have always had a little bit of a pipe dream where we incorporated more FCS games with both the Ivy Leagues as well as the Citadel and VMI. And not because that's necessarily the highest level of competition, but if you're going to have one FCS game a year, maybe 2 FCS games a year, I think that it's important, God bless Morgan State, God bless Mercer, Dell State, who are playing this year, Delaware State, It's super cool. I think Delaware State is an HBCU. Not positive on that, but I think they are. Um, I think that's super cool. If we are going to be playing FCS schools, which we are, because all FBS schools ultimately do, I feel like we should be playing schools that we are competing with in terms of our recruits. And VMI, Citadel, Ivy Leagues, these are not the top tier FCS schools. But if you are a caliber of football player who can play, say, at Princeton or Yale or Harvard or Citadel, again, not top flight FCS, but you obviously have the academics to compete at an academy. You obviously have the drive and the discipline. It would seem to me that there's got to be some guys out there who we are trying to recruit, who I don't want to say we're losing to those schools, but that seems to be a collective pool. And if you are trying to recruit against other schools, again, not that we're necessarily losing guys to these schools, but it seems to me that those are teams that you want to schedule. Because if you're willing to go to VMI and play football, or you're willing to go to Columbia and play football, I think there's probably a higher likelihood that you're willing to come to West Point and play football. And those are the diamonds in the rough that we might be able to find. I mean, Brent Davis came from VMI. I mean, these are schools that at least up until 2023, a lot of them are running very similar offenses. The caliber of players, both academically and physically, they might be in line with us. So, look, they might be patty cake games, but I'm not sure Morgan State ever gave us a really good test. We lost to Yale like 6 or 7 years ago. So I would love to see more schools like that getting incorporated in. God bless Holy Cross, but I think we could be more strategic in our FCS scheduling. But ultimately, it's an FCS team. It's not critical who we're playing. It could be Delaware State. It could be University of Delaware. It could be University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I don't even know if they have a football team, but that's right. But that's my point, is that let's be strategic in who we are scheduling, because I don't know, it might pay dividends.
Yeah, so I'm gonna push back a little bit on that because the Patriot League, I think they are peer institutions, of course, with us being a Patriot League school in Olympic sports. So yeah, like definitely we definitely think do compete for recruits with Patriot League schools and Holy Cross as well. Like that one honestly kind of reeks of the Villanova game because Holy Cross, not ashamed to say, Worcester guy, grew up from 2001 to 2011, 10 years in Worcester, Massachusetts, grew up 10 minutes away from Fitton Field out of Holy Cross. Holy Cross is my number two team. Uh, the past couple years, like especially last year, they went 11-0 in the regular season, won their first round game, or they got a bye because they got a seed. They won their second round game against New Hampshire. Great season, 12-1, beat Buffalo, who played in the Camellia Bowl last year. Definitely a track game too. But yeah, like a pure academic institution, private school in New England, rich tradition, kind of like your great great grandfather's type of blue blood, with Orange Bowl birth in the 40s. So, I mean, I think we're in the sweet spot there too. And I think Delaware State, while it's definitely kind of it's definitely a new opponent on the schedule. I think it has the same purpose of like Morgan State, where like Morgan State from the late 60s all the way up to like the late 70s, early 80s would play a yearly game at Yankee Stadium. So, like Morgan State playing in like the New York City Metro is like a huge deal. It kind of brings like a new crowd into the academy, kind of like brings like people like the HBCU crowd into the academy. So Delaware State kind of the same thing too, and I think it's good for the greater recruiting of the academy, where you have someone make the drive from Dover, Delaware, and kind of like get to look and see what the academy is all about. and kind of recruit, have the academy recruit from there, like not just sports, but just like cadets, prospective cadets in general. So definitely a lot of value there. But yeah, so I do agree. Like the Ivy Leagues are great. Ivy League matchups are great.
There we go, unmuted. Let me just go ahead and say that you are 100% right. That like I've had these ideas in my head and I'm like, oh, I wish I could talk to somebody about this. I know what to do with Army football. And in like 45 seconds, you like completely dismantle what I'm talking about. And it's like, shit, he's exactly right.
I didn't mean it.
Very well
I
done.
did not mean it. I
Very
did not
well
mean
done.
that.
Very well done. And also, I need to give you a gold star because earlier you used the word anemic, and it's like, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, when you write as much as me, I think my Grammarly says that I'm up to 10,000 words a week. Just writing scripts for videos. Like you just find words. So, but yeah, I did not mean to shut down your vision at all. Just giving my
No, no.
perspective.
Listen, and look, I'm sitting here talking about Ivy League schools and Citadel and other military academies, and it's like I had not even considered that. It's like right, but if you will play an HBCU, it's like you open the academy, so to speak. Or you open that world, that pool of people to the academy. I mean, listen, you attended West Point. I didn't even attend. I can only imagine how many times you've had the conversation because I know how many times I've had it, which is like, no, 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 no. This is not the best football players in the Army. This is a university. That's right. We have a university that feeds into the military. Yes, it's a college like all the other colleges, except it's really, really good. It's actually a better education than whatever 98% of the other institutions in this country. Yes, these are college students. Like there's a whole swath of this country who are just unfamiliar with the service academies and their mission, their role, what they do. And I actually kind of take it personally. I mean, even though I didn't attend, I come from such a strong West Point family. I take it very, very personally when people are like, oh, so it's just like, boot camp at college. And it's like, no, no, it's not like that at all. Actually, it's an extremely, it's a rigorous, I'd use the word crucible before we got started. It really is. It's a crucible to fill our officer corps. And it annoys me and it frustrates me that the general public doesn't have a better understanding of that. And to tie it into something that we hadn't talked about yet, Andre Carter. And there's talk he might be a first round draft pick. He might go on the first day or the second day. He's, the best football player we've had in however many years. And should he be allowed to play? And obviously my family is very tied into the academy. And there are components of my family. There's people on both sides. And there's some who say, no, 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 he absolutely should be allowed to play in the NFL because the more people we have playing, let's say in the NFL, saying I went to West Point and that's who I am and that's who made me, that raises the visibility of the school and that is good for the school. And then there's other components of my family that say, nope, I'm very sorry. He signed up to be an Army officer and he should go be an Army officer. That's why the academy exists. It's not to produce football players. And so is it mission critical to raise the visibility and the notoriety of the school? I don't know if I'd say it's mission critical, but I think it's beneficial. I think that's probably a net positive for the school in terms of literally getting the word out so that people understand what West Point is as an institution and bringing in the best officer candidates from the entire country and scheduling, like you said, a Delaware State or a Morgan State or Alabama A&M or whoever. That is opening a new pool of people to what the academy is, what it stands for, what its purpose is. And that ultimately is a net gain for both the academy and the country.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly stated. Like I really do. Yeah, I think that definitely the games like the Morgan State, the Delaware State game like has that benefit too, just for visibility. And yeah, Andre Carter is like definitely, we didn't have that on the agenda, but it's definitely a hot button topic. But it's like everyone's kind of like looking at the short side, like, what's to say like he doesn't do what Malcolm Perry did, where Malcolm Perry, well, he had his rookie year, caught 9 passes, was a Wildcat quarterback on a couple of plays for the Miami Dolphins, a team that's on the pit on the team that was in the thick of the playoff race. And that then he gets injured in the 2021 preseason, or he gets cut. But whatever happens, he gets cut, bounces around practice squads, and decides, hey, this is the commitment that I decided. I had my time in the NFL already. I'm gonna serve my commitment with the Marine Corps, which very honorable of him. He could have just continued on, just like continued like chasing the dream and everything, and like I definitely would have respected him. Whatever he would have done, would have respected it for sure. But his decision after, like kind of like the wanted to see if he could make it, and he did make it. So I think a lot of people that have that perspective, like Andre Carter should not play. It's kind of like short sighted. They aren't looking at pretty much like the most recent case study, like Malcolm Perry. Um, so yeah, like I totally agree there. Do you have anything else to add before we go on a completely different note with this other thing we were supposed to cover?
Just one more thing, beat Navy. That would be the one last thing I have to say, and then we can move on to other topics. Look, I got all these notes. I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Yeah, so our next topic, like I said, is a completely different direction. Jimmy Allen was relieved of his duties as coach recently, and I always liked Coach Allen. He was the coach, of course, when I was there. Graduated in the spring of 2021, so he was a coach when I was there. Got fond memories, of him during the pandemic season. Just wanting to get out of my barracks during the pandemic season and just watching Army beat lacrosse. Sorry, not lacrosse, beat LaSalle in an almost empty Crystal Arena. But that's an A10 school for me. Like even as a casual basketball fan, like the A10, big deal. And for us to beat LaSalle, a Big Five school, love my Big Five, a Big Five school, huge deal. Him kind of getting relieved. I I think I'm kind of on the fence with it. I mean, I think as long as Colgate continues doing what they're doing in the Patriot League, it's going to be hard for Army to get anyone who can beat Colgate in a big game. But I think maybe they're looking for someone that, can beat them just once. Like I know Boston University beat Colgate in like before the pandemic shut everything down. And, I think if we could fit the sort of model that Boston University is, where where we get bids to CBI like we did in the pandemic season. Um, we occasionally beat Colgate as hard as it is right now. Where we occasionally do that. I think that might be the great guy long term, but I wish Jimmy Allen nothing but the best. Like, of course, this is like I honestly I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's like the second toughest job in the country. The toughest being Chicago State, where you're an independent, no conference wants you. That definitely is the toughest job. I think Army's the second toughest job. Like almost no basketball pedigree, except for Coach K and Bobby Knight to speak of. No tournament appearances. Height restrictions for the most part. I think I'm not sure if there's actually height restrictions, but I just think it's just a tough place to win, and I just commend him for doing what he did, in his time here at the academy.
Um, yeah, with respect to Jimmy Allen, I feel the same way about him that I felt about Brent Davis, to pull it back to football. Um, I think I if he had been retained, they said that it was a mutual parting, which I'm sure that it was. But if Army had wanted him to stay, I would wager he would have. It was not described as him wanting to move on, but just a mutual parting. If he had stayed, I wouldn't have complained about it. I wouldn't have said that it was a bad move. That being said, him, moving on, I'm not complaining about it. Army is it's got to be, as you said, the second toughest place to play between the height restrictions. My understanding is, listen, finding a random 7-footer and sticking him on your basketball team, that's not a panacea. That's not going to solve all your problems. But regardless of how effective that is at solving your basketball woes, that's not an option for Army. I don't know much about Army basketball, about basketball recruiting. Um, Obviously, the pool of players is absolutely massive. Um, the It's hard for me to think that Army can compete with the caliber of individual player um, with other Division I programs, even more so than football. I think it's probably even harder to recruit. I think that Army needs to move in a direction in terms of their basketball program to do everything they can to model what Tony Bennett is doing at the University of Virginia. I'm originally from Virginia, so I'm very biased, but I think that his style of coaching, his philosophy is perfectly tailored to the academy. Obviously, we're not getting Tony Bennett. He's won a national championship at an ACC school, but the way that he emphasizes teamwork, he's not looking for one and dones. He's not recruiting guys who have a super high likelihood of going pro after 1 year or even 2 years. He is coaching sort of a ball control, minimizing total possessions, heavy on the defense. I think that's the exact type of scheme that we should be running in our offensive program. I did, a little bit of a deep dive into sort of what he's doing at UVA because he is the highest profile coach who's coaching that type of scheme. And honestly, I was like, well, who are his assistants? And maybe I don't know. I know even less about college basketball than I do college football, and I don't even know that much about college football. But you look at his assistants, and the most junior member of his staff has been there for 5 years. So there's not a lot of turnover. His coaching tree is relatively small. Guys aren't getting picked up to go be coaches at other places. I think that might be because he is coaching such a unique and individual style that's so different than a John Calipari or a Coach K before he retired. The coaches who said, look, if one and done is the way that we're going to go, then we're going to go all in on one and done. Not because we necessarily want to, but because we have to adapt or die. And he has taken the exact opposite approach. And, what do you get? You get UVA, who in 1 year becomes the first and only number 1 seed to lose in the first round of the NCAA. And then the following year, they win the national championship. And all of a sudden, I start thinking about UVA basketball sort of like I think about Army football. When we're banging on all cylinders, we can beat anyone in the country, but we can also lose to anyone in the country. We took Oklahoma going to football, we took Oklahoma to overtime. We took Michigan to overtime. It behooves us to play a scheme that will maximize our potential upside, given the constraints of the fact that we are the number 1 public university in the country that also requires all of our students to become officers in the United States Army. So I think we need to move towards a coach who will try and bring that in. I know all coaches talk about teamwork and all coaches talk about, team first, individual second. But we need a coach whose philosophy, whose ethos really just exudes that to the point that, the bar could not be lower at Army. The last coach to have a winning record at Army was Coach K, who coached between 1975 and 1980. And we had Jim Cruz until the early 2000s. And he went, I took some notes here, he went 59 and 140. And he was replaced by Zach Spiker, who went 102 and 112, which is better, but not great. And Spiker got replaced with Jimmy Allen. And Jimmy Allen was one of his assistants. And I love internal hires. I think that's really good at maintaining philosophy, at continuity. But when you have a coach who goes 102 and 112 and then gets replaced by a coach who goes 98 and 112 in his tenure, okay, cool. It's a lateral move. The bar is very, very low. We've never done better than third in the Patriot. We've never made it to the Patriot League final. I know that this is very, very difficult to do for Army, but we got to do a little better than that. I mean, I'm not upset that we're moving in a different direction. I would have been fine if he stayed, but I think it's totally acceptable that we are going in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And just doing some research too, like the whole philosophy of like Tony Bennett's defense, I guess like offense philosophy and defense philosophy too. I think it aligns well. Just like looking at Colgate, because I know Colgate loves to score points. Like I mean, shoot, it's basketball. Everyone loves to score points. I mean, Colgate loves to play up tempo. They score a ton of points. I mean, I was looking at their schedule this year. Of course, they beat Syracuse for the second straight year. Only the third time since 1961, and these teams play every year. Just amazing. But they dropped like Colgate's a team that dropped 100 on Syracuse in 2022, and so that's the type of team we're dealing with. Like that's like honestly like anyone that follows mid-major basketball, anyone that knows about the Patriot League, like they are not gonna beat around the bush. They're gonna be straight to the point and tell you that the goal is to beat Colgate right now. Like Colgate is a team to beat. That's who every single Patriot League team is gunning for. Now, an approach like a Tony Bennett type approach, a defense focused approach, a slow the game down approach works best in getting in, owning the game instead of like having to play a track meet, having to run a track meet against Colgate and just like constantly like being these 80-point shootouts, these 90-point shootouts. And I think it aligns well with like what you say about the philosophy and like the approach we have to take in the Patriot League. But I mean, it's tough. It's tough, and I do like that the academy is giving coaches like a lot of leeway, a lot of patience. It hurts that Zach Spiker left, but Drexel is definitely Philadelphia college basketball is amazing. Probably the best place, I think, in my opinion, to be a basketball coach. The best city to be a basketball coach, and I don't blame him for leaving. I don't blame him for leaving to Drexel at all. I don't blame him at all. But yeah, if we can just get that, it's like at the moment, it's like get that kind of that coach, that defense minded coach, that low scoring type of game minded coach, then I think that's a great direction going, honestly. But I wish Coach Allen the best. Want to thank him for 2021 CBI appearance. I was so excited. I was so excited for that tournament. Honestly, I thought I was at 18 field. I'm like, it's a chance for Army to win a title, and then they lose in the first round to I think it was Stetson. Yeah, losing the first round to Stetson. I'm like, okay, that's great.
Well, I I have a natural affinity for underdogs, for underrepresented teams, and sort of mindsets, and so I love the idea of us going to. I mean, the CIT doesn't exist anymore, but we went there in 2016. The CBI in 2021. Look, postseason play is postseason play, and look, if we could make it to the NIT, I would be, I'd be jumping for joy, let alone the NCAA, which is obviously, that's the pinnacle where we're trying to get to. But it looks like at the moment, unless we get very, very hot and very, very lucky in the Patriot League tournament, we're not getting to the NCAAs. You've been talking quite a bit about Colgate. I think they've won the last three. They are, they are the king of the hill and the Patriot, for now. I think that we're bringing back 4 starters next year. We have Jalen Rucker, who's first team Patriot. We have Ethan Roberts, who is the Patriot League Rookie of the Year.
Mhm.
I think we have a lot of really strong pieces. Um, I I hope that whoever it is who comes in can can maintain the momentum, that we don't sort of lose a year on a new coach, because we do have four returning starters. We did make it to the Patriots semifinals. I know that this year was not a really standout year. I think we were 17-16, or give or take somewhere in there. Um, it's not that, hey, it's ours to lose next year, but I do think we have a fighting chance that we don't always have. So, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I do hope we don't lose here. I think it's more likely we do in figuring things out. But yeah, it seems like Rucker's been around forever. Like that's something that caught up to me because I mean he's been just so involved like forever as a starter and everything in the program ever since I was there. And like, I mean that's like pre-pandemic the year I was there, like as a freshman. But he'll certainly lead the charge. But yeah, I mean, I'm just excited. I don't know too much about what coaching candidates are hot around college basketball, honestly. So, who Army hires is like anyone's guess, and I'll have to do my research after. But yeah, like it again, a tough job. But yeah, like we'll see. One day, Army will make the tournament. One day they
One
will.
day, one day we will.
One day
I
they will.
will say, this is a shameless plug for Sideline Sport Network, Sidelines Army, SSN_Army. Look me up on Twitter. But I will say that the news broke that Jimmy Allen and Army were parting ways, and within about 90 minutes, an assistant basketball coach from a totally random school started following me. And I was like, whatever. Like, okay, I got, I don't know, 800 some odd followers, which is like nothing in the relative scheme of things. But not only did this assistant coach start following me, but started like liking my tweets. And I did one of those mini like Twitter podcasts, the Spaces. I did one about the rugby team. I'm a former rugby player myself, so I follow Army rugby very, very, very closely. And like, he was literally the only one who listened, and I'm like, what is this like random assistant basketball coach doing? Like listening to me talk to nobody about how we lost to Central Washington in rugby. And like, it's not as though I'm some tastemaker. Like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm like, don't be ridiculous. But I will say that, I don't know, things like that. It did make me think. I like this afternoon, I was like, I wonder if, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's just thinks I've got great things to say on Twitter. I don't know. I don't know, but we'll see. I don't know enough about college basketball. I don't have a laundry list of like, oh, we should be looking at this assistant or this head coach or this guy in Division II or this guy in 1AA or whatever it is. I don't know. I have no idea. I trust Mike Buddy, our AD. I think he's really, really good at making hires. So, I drink the Kool-Aid. So whoever he hires, I'm probably going to be like, this is the best hire we've ever had. We've done it. We're going to break through now, but we just got to see.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows? Who knows if that assistant, could be the guy. But yeah, like I do trust Mike Buddy. He's done a great job. And it's like, yeah, there's things I disagree with. Excuse me, I guess in terms of like, the two FCS opponents, like I'm fine with just one FCS opponents, but there's definitely a method to why he does it. And it's like, and I can respect. I do respect the decisions he makes a lot. So we'll see for sure. Yeah, like that's I don't have anything else on that topic. That's all we had planned, Cuthbert. Do you have anything else to add?
I just want to say it was a pleasure. I hope I didn't yap on too much. I'm sure I did, but this was really fantastic, man. You and I have followed each other for a while on Twitter, so I was pumped when you reached out for me to be on the podcast, and I just want to say thank you so much. This has been a blast. Anytime that you want to talk anything Army sports, just let me know. I'm always ready. My wife will tell you I'm always ready to talk Army sports. So thank you so much, man. And, go Army, beat Navy.
Oh yeah, go Army, beat Navy, and the pleasure is mine. I always love that's just the one thing I just reflect on, just like doing the podcast, is like meeting so many people in general, so many great people that just love to talk sports. We'll just go on for an hour plus, if not longer, if we had the opportunity to talk about, it's already been an hour, talk about just college football, college basketball, so like very rarely, but college basketball too. So I thank you for coming on, and we definitely will stay in touch, and I look forward to our future conversations. Yeah, so uh thanks again, Cuthbert. Thanks everyone for listening. If you've made it this far, or watching if you made it this far, stay tuned to the channel. Got these podcasts, got the mini documentaries coming out, 2 per week. And yeah, until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.